Hello, everyone. This is Felicia Bender, the practical numerologist. So, we are talking about the number 4 pinnacle today. So, this video is devoted to the 4 pinnacle. Now, if you don't know what a pinnacle is, if you just stumbled on this video, take a moment, go down to the description box. There is a video describing what the pinnacle cycles are in numerology, in Pythagorean numerology to be specific, and gives you an idea about how to understand what these cycles are, what they bring to your life, how to understand them. And the second is going to be a video about how to calculate the pinnacle cycles, because there's no hard math in numerology, and yet there is math that you just need to sit down and concentrate for a second. Yeah, so we would go through, and it is one of the more, in numerology, one of the more complex, if you want to call it that, calculations. So if you want to know how to do that, and you have a moment, have your pen and paper to sit down and do that, please take a moment to do so. Otherwise, I'm going to jump right in, because I am making a wild assumption that if you are clicking on this video, you want to know about the 4 pinnacle, because either you know that you're experiencing it right now, you have experienced it in the past and would like to go, what the heck just happened there? How can I understand this? Or perhaps you have your pinnacles in front of you and you'd like to know what's coming up, right? What's coming up for you. So, in terms of the 4 pinnacle, whenever you experience a number 4 pinnacle, it is going to be all about hard work and all about organization. Those are, if I have to distill it down to 2 concepts, that's going to be the thematics. All right. And so if you know about the pinnacles, you will know that we have 4 of them, and that the first pinnacle and the last pinnacle are the longest periods of time, of course, depending on how long we live. And yet the second pinnacle cycle and the third pinnacle cycle are both 9-year cycles back to back. All right. So depending on when the number 4 comes up as a pinnacle for you, it's always going to have the same basic themes, the same basic idea around it. And yet it's nice to kind of put it into a little bit more of a context in terms of when it shows up in your life. It's going to show up for you a little bit differently if it shows up as that first pinnacle as it does in your third. And we'll try to put that into play here as we discuss this. All right. So let's get going. Let's get in it. So if you experience or are experiencing or will be experiencing a 4 pinnacle in your first pinnacle cycle, Hans Dekos, master numerologist, and other numerologists will basically say that this is a time of attainment. I would say this is, of course, it's when you're born. It is your formative years. So these are your formative years, and goes into your 20s, into 20s and 30s. So if we use a loose time frame here, your first pinnacle cycle is by and large the first 30 years of your life. That's a long time, right? So if this is a number 4, it shows up for you as a first pinnacle cycle of time. This is a stage where you'll learn the value of hard work and of effort. It is a time when you desire stability and security, yet it's rarely there for you. Sometimes it is, but it's more rare. If you are exploring numerology or any of these modalities, you kind of come to an understanding that what we're presented with is always what we're there to work with and what we're there to master, right, and experience. So we're going to have the positives and then the challenges or the obstacles to allow us to learn about it, right? So if you're learning about stability and security, we rarely learn it when we already have it. So it's when you are reaching for that, usually during this period of time, and you learn to be dependable, you learn to be reliable, conscientious, and I would say the key word here is responsible. This is a time where you're super responsible, or the opposite, very irresponsible, and yet you get to learn to step into your sense of responsibility, usually during this time. Optimally, that's what it's for. Let's ask you how that goes for you. So let's see. And yet, it really is a time where you're asked to be much more conscientious, much more tried and true, trustworthy, all of those very real, pragmatic, practical attributes is what you're learning about. So you can find yourself to be a dedicated student, or alternately, you can detour around those responsibilities. You can kind of avoid it until you don't, right? Or maybe you never do, and yet you feel like you're really off track. All right. So this is a time what I find primarily when I work with people, when I work with, when I work with people, when I work with clients, when I reflect on people's life stories and their experience. Often the common theme or the common factor here, if you have a 4 pinnacle for that first pinnacle cycle, it's often when you show up in a family where you're the parent, where whether you feel you are and think you are, or whether you really are, whether you come from a divorced family early on and your mom has to work and you've got to take care of yourself or your siblings. It's a time where you often have, there's a scarcity of resources, of money, so you work early. You take on more adult responsibilities earlier on in life. Most often with this pinnacle, it's a time where you really, whether you understand it consciously or not, are really desire a sense of stability, security, all of those very comforting situations, and they usually elude you during this period of time. Again, there can be addiction in the family, there can be absent parents, abandonment, all of that. And I don't want to make it all gloom and doom at all. I know some people who don't have that. And yet, what they are learning is the value of hard work. They're learning how to be organized, systematic, to have longer range goals, to understand how to get from point A to point B to point C in a very methodical way. It's often where you're a very good student, where you're a knowledge sponge, a knowledge seeker. Sometimes you can even become a teacher during this period of time. And it's something that is alluring to you, as a life choice in terms of what you want to do. It can often point to getting married and starting a family somewhat early. Those are the things that can often happen during a 4 pinnacle. It is a time where you're really facing certain limitations. The 4 is the number of limitation and hard work. All right. So the beautiful part of it is that you'll learn self-reliance, you'll learn how to get stuff done, and you will be unstoppable in terms of you set a goal, you go after it, and you achieve it, right? It's about having that sense of accomplishment and the ability to accomplish things in that way. All right. That's what you're learning. So if you experience a number 4 pinnacle in your second period cycle, this is a time of obligation. This is where achievement and setting down roots are a really keynote for this period. You learn to navigate limiting circumstances and make order out of chaos. If it's one thing the 4 despises is chaos, and yet because the 4 despises chaos, that's what you end up navigating, because that's how the universe works, apparently, is that we're supposed to be dropped in to these situations that are our worst nightmare sometimes, and yet the point is to learn how to put structure into that chaos, to make something out of virtually nothing in that way. All right. So often you're really drawn to, again, start a family, build a house, move, simply set a stronger foundation in your life. For instance, I have a dear friend of mine who was in another country and going to school and got a job and everything else. And then his family got into some really big trouble with the family business that his father was running into the ground, and he had to make the decision if he was going to stop doing what he was doing in the country that he was in, which had always kind of been his lifelong dream, or go back and help the family. Of course, he thought it was going to be a year, 6 months, something like that, and it ended up being a long period of time. And then he referenced it was actually 20 years. And then he referenced his numerology, and he had two number 4 pinnacle cycles back to back, his second and his third. And he could really put it into context. He's like, wow, that was it. And often it's where family issues come into play, old family dynamics and wounds to be looked at and healed, repositioned. And it's a time where, again, you're working with some limited or limiting situations and attempting to navigate with those and through those during that period of time. Now, I don't want it, this is not a negative pinnacle at all. Often when people experience this, it is a time of a lot of accomplishment, of a lot of really positive, strong feelings about what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and all the rest of it. I hope that makes sense. But there is a lot of gratification and satisfaction that comes from a job well done, and that is what can really come into play when you experience a 4 pinnacle. It is a time where you're setting up foundations not only in your own life, but to leave something of lasting value, whether it's a family or whether it's a business or something of that nature. Okay, so um, that time of obligation, the second pinnacle cycle, it is really a time where you are setting down those roots, navigating those circumstances. And I often find people are having children or having more children or grandchildren even during this time, where they're building a house, making sure that their sense of security is in place, where they're really working hard and getting their retirement plan all mapped out, and where they're doing things that they feel really strongly about, in in all ways. I don't know if I'm making any sense with that, but it's a very productive amount of period of time. All right, if you have a 4 in a third cycle of time, this is a time of foundation, rising in the ranks with your career, planning, setting realistic and attainable goals is really a driving force here. It is not airy fairy and pie in the sky when you are involved with a 4 pinnacle in any way. It is very pragmatic, very down and dirty about A equals B and B equals C and how do we get there, right? So it's about being practical and frugal. It is a time of slow growth that leads to substantial achievement. So there's no boundaries to the success here as long as there's stability. So again, the stability and security is a key player in what you are seeking during this time, whether you know it consciously or not. So the 4th pinnacle cycle, if that shows up with the number 4, it is a time of culmination. Once again, just think about it. The first, second, and third pinnacles are all stepping stones to getting to this 4th and final, the crescendo of your life. And so what are you bridging everything into this container, to this goal, to this theme? And if this is the case for you, this is a time of harvest. There is a drive to work hard with clear goals, it often with this incredible sense of satisfaction. I have some dear friends who are, they write books, they do all kinds of service in this way in the healing community. And I don't know people who work any harder or more consistently or more doggedly than they do, and they love it. I mean, it's exhausting sometimes, and there's fits and starts, and there are missteps, and there's this and that, and yet they really have their eye on the prize. They have a reason for doing what they're doing, and they're really sinking everything into it, their heart, their soul, all of that. And that's kind of the 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 nucleus of the most positive elements of this pinnacle. It's where you're really, really making something happen for reasons that feel very, very profound for you. So it is a time of perseverance, and also finding time to play, to relax, to lighten up. This is really a requirement for this period of time. It sounds a little bit oxymoronic, but it really isn't. The 4 is the number in numerology of health. It is not the number of bad health. Please understand me. It is the number of health. And what it's kind of, to me, a little bit like Virgo in astrology, insofar as it is about, because of the 4, whenever you're experiencing a 4 cycle, or if you have a 4 as one of your core numbers, there's going to be this driver about working hard, getting it done, always having more on the punch list, putting yourself over to the side until this gets done, but of course it never gets done. And so what happens is burnout, right? Ill health, because you're not taking the time to eat right. You're not taking the time to exercise. You're not taking the time to meditate or to relax the mind, to make the body, to strengthen the body in all of those ways. I mean, it sounds kind of silly to say it out loud, but it's true. Have you ever been that way yourself, or know someone who's like, man, you got to lighten up, you got to take a break, or else you're just going to crash and burn, right? And yet those who are doing it, are like, I'll do it as soon as, and as soon as never comes until you really have a crash, right? So when you're experiencing a 4 pentacle, I beg you to please put yourself on your calendar. You're there for the long haul. So you have to really put it into how you perceive things, that you've got to put yourself again on the calendar. You have to take those breaks strategically and mindfully in order to be at your highest and best. All right. This is a responsible time leading to much, much success. It's just I always say that the 4 Pinnacle is offering, it's not a time where you're focused on something disposable, right? To be the one-hit wonder. It's really, you're looking at something that you want to leave a lasting value, something of lasting value in the world. And you're really, really digging deep and laying those bricks to build whatever it is that you are building during this period of time. All right, if you want to know about your other pinnacles, take another look at, we've got each of the pinnacles 1 through 9. And if you are unsure about the timing, there's a video in the description, and also just more of a descriptor about what the pinnacles are all about to begin with.